Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk here in the southeast corner of Scotland in the UK. Of course, Scotland, as everybody should know by now who's been watching this show for long enough, is the capital of literally everything, including things yet discovered. You know, things that have not yet been discovered. Yep, we're there already. We own it. It's ours. Anyway, I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope everybody has had a great weekend so far. It's been a good weekend for me so far too, and I apologize for not being able to do the show on Wednesday. I had a pretty nasty migraine. Took me pretty much another sort of 36 hours after the migraine cleared for me to recover from it. It was not entertaining in the slightest. So not even my usual kind of solutions to kind of getting through a migraine would work, like listening to an audiobook, something like that. Couldn't even do that. So it was not very entertaining. But that said, I am feeling very much better, and I'm hoping that will be like the last one for a good while. This year, in terms of migraines, because I do suffer from frequent migraines, this year has actually been a good year. I have not had very many at all. That's only like the fifth one this year. So, and we're in September. So, I feel like I've done pretty well this year. I've had some terrible years in the past. I think my worst year was when I had like nearly 200. And yes. It really, migraines are no fun. They're not entertaining at all. If I manage to catch them in time and I get medication into me pretty much straight away, kind of as soon as I start to feel it starting, then I can get away with it. I can get away with it, and I don't really suffer particularly at all. I can just carry on with my life. But if I don't, and on this particular occasion, I was too distracted and too involved in something else that I didn't get the medication in time. And so I ended up missing the moment, and that was costly. I have had migraines for long enough now that I should know better, but I didn't. So anyway, here we are on Sunday, and I'm feeling pretty good. So we've already got a couple of questions here already, so we'll get into those in just a wee minute. But it looks like Rock Tease was the first in the door tonight. It certainly looks that way. If I'm looking at the timestamps, he beats Billy Morgan by 6 minutes, which is pretty, that's an achievement. I'll give you that. And he says, greetings from New Zealand. Greetings to you too, my friend. And of course, Billy Morgan's second in the door, followed by Jay Feliciano, who is also here. And my good friend Chris Rackner is also here, who has a question which we will get to very shortly. And John Hawke is here. Tony Stringer is also here. He says, good evening. I hope it's not raining cats and dogs so you get fed up. Not here, it's not. It's actually pretty good weather here. I'm just pulling my chair in a little bit. It's actually pretty good here. It's been an all right day. We had a little bit of drizzle this afternoon, but nothing really to write home about or be worried about. And Rock Tease has the second question, which we'll also get to in just a minute. Just Bob is here as well. He says, I'll be listening in the background today, helping out around the house. Mr. Domestic Bob. I love it. Bob, you need to change your YouTube name to just Domestically Bob. That would be awesome. Neil Thompson is here as well. Hello to the people. Pre-like this live stream. Pre-liking. That's a cool concept. I like that. If you choose to like the show before it starts, you guys are legendary. You guys are awesome. And I thank you very much if you have already liked the show before it starts. You guys are great. We got 17 people here just now. Hopefully it'll go up a wee bit. But I know it's kind of like the start of the academic year already. Certainly here in this particular part of Scotland, we have universities nearby. We've got the Queen Mary University not too far away. We've got Napier University also not too far away. And then we've also got the University of Edinburgh, which is the UK's oldest university, founded by Henry VIII, which is also here. I attended that university to do my postgraduate degree in music education. And that, gosh, that was a long time ago now. That was like 15 years ago, 16 years ago, nearly. But yes, so we've got lots of universities here, and so a lot of students are arriving and swelling the population of southeast Scotland. So yes. Let's see, who else do we have here? We've got Burlap Studio. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. Welcome back. We got Rich Cresswell. We've got Keith from Radio Tuck Frumpet. We got Bobby Booth, which means we can start the show. And we got Dwayne here as well. And it was Burlap Studio who was pre-liking. You guys are great. So I noticed we've lost a few folks already, but we have like parity, which is great. We've got 14 people watching, 14 people likes, which is great. I like it when we have like parity, but I would like a few more people in here as well. That would be great. All right, so let's get to those questions, and I'm going to scroll up to the first one, which are, oh, by the way, before I get to questions, if you have a question that you would like me to answer, and it's about Studio One, using Studio One, or more broadly, recording, mixing, and mastering, if you have those kind of questions, and you're not subscribed, please subscribe to start with, and then give it a couple of minutes, and the chat will be unlocked for you, and you can ask your question there. Please preface, that means start, your question with @Jonny Lipsham Studios. If you do that, that highlights my name in red for me. You don't see it, but I see it in the chat, and it makes it easier for me to pick out questions whilst you guys are actually talking amongst yourselves in the chat. And I love it when you guys talk amongst yourselves. It's great. Great to see you guys building relationships with each other and also helping each other out as well. That's great. I love that. But if you do have a question, I don't want to miss it. So please do type @Jonny Lipsham Studios at the start of your question. And if you need to, because of the character limit, if you need to go over into 2 posts, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So if you need to do that, do that. But yes, more questions would be great. We've got 2 so far, so let's get some more in there. Let's see. Chris Marachna says, would you happen to know the audio bitrate when exporting a video in Studio One? Now, this is a great question, because the answer to this question is it's unknown, because basically it uses the audio codecs that were used when encoding the video in the first place. So whatever the audio codec was used when making that video in the first place, that you have brought into Studio One to do whatever it is you're going to do, new music, sound design, whatever it is you're going to do with your with the video, and then when you export the video, it uses the same source codec, by the way. So if, for example, it's an MP4 that you brought in, the audio codec is AAC for the most part. That's what they use. They don't use MP3 audio. They use AAC for MP4 encoding, which means it's high quality audio. It's not going to be a low quality audio. It's going to be a high quality audio. So MP4 is going to have decent quality audio. But as I said, I don't know what that value, what that bit depth is set at, because it depends upon what was used. So we can go over to Studio One and we can explore this a little more thoroughly. If I open up the correct song, and we will go to the screen over here, and we'll get the camera on at the top there. So what I have here is I have a song with my Studio One 6.6 overview video. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I'll play just a wee bit of this. And of course, these sections here are completely automatable. So you can right click on here and you can assign these to pads and to knobs. And also you can just create an automation lane for any of these here. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I was talking about Lead Architect there. So If we say, you know what, we don't really need to do anything else to this, I like it the way it is. Or let's say we decide the audio is just a little bit on the quiet side. We can select this here and we can bump it up by a couple of dB. And then we can just jump into the video and right click on here, and you can assign these to pads and to knobs. And also, so now the video is much louder. And let's say we're happy with that. And we go song, export video. Now you'll notice here that it says here source format MPEG-4. And the audio format is AAC because that's the audio codec that is used in an MP4 video. So I could uncheck this box and I could change the audio codec if I wanted to. So I have the choice of MP3 or Dolby AAC. Now, if I click on MP3, notice that there is no option to set the bit depth. Okay, I don't have any control over that. But I'm going to leave it at AAC and I'm going to check that box again. And now it's back, it's set back to what it was. So the video codec is H.264 and then audio is AAC. So it's decent quality audio. AAC is a decent audio format. But like I said, you have no control over the bit depth or even the bit rate that is used for the format here. And then you can choose to export the range as either the full length of the video or between selected markers or between the start and end marker, whatever it is you prefer. Generally speaking, if I'm exporting a video, I keep it set at video. Although sometimes I'll have it export between start and end markers, like if I want a little bit of like black screen at the end of the video and I want the audio to continue whilst there's black screen, then I would select start and end markers and I'd basically set the start and end markers as required. But basically, these are the only options you get in exporting video. The thing to bear in mind here is that Studio One is not really a video editing software, as I'm sure everybody is clear on and aware of, even though we have some bare bones basic editing features in the video track. The video track, the concept behind it, the reason why we have it is to make it easier for composers doing sound design for picture or composing music for picture, for TV, for a film, or for a trailer, for example. I know a lot of people that do music for movie trailers, or they'll do a TV commercial, and they'll do the sound design and the music for the TV commercial. I don't do those. I do student films. So I work with the film department at Edinburgh University, and I work with the film students there. And I basically, because they're students, I offer my services as a composer for free. I don't charge them. And I provide them with a score for their short films. And their short films are usually 5 minutes long. So it's not like a massive task. And I'll work with maybe 3 or 4, sometimes 5 students, and I'll do the music for their films. But it's only like a 5-minute film. So it's fairly straightforward to do. And then I don't do any of the sound effects or sound design unless they ask me for some specific sound effects. In which case, I have done films where I do vocal sound effects. Like I can do things like doors opening, doors closing. I can do footsteps. I can do all sorts of things just vocally. And I've done those for some films where that's been a requirement or that's been asked for. And I don't mind doing those kind of things. They're just fun. It's just fun to do that kind of stuff. So, so yes, these are the only options you get. So generally speaking, I don't change this. I will want to use the source codecs so that whatever file format they have sent me that is compatible with a Windows PC, that's what I use. And I send that back to them. And sometimes, depending upon whether I'm using some external hardware gear, for the most part, I'm not. But if I am, then I'll use the the real-time processing for that as well. Mike says, Johnny is really good at fart sounds. Yes, I am particularly good at fart sounds. I actually, you Mike, you may or may not believe this, but I actually have put that particular sound effect into practice on a low-budget comedy film many years ago. We're talking way back in the 1990s. There was, I think it was Edgar Wright, the actor and director. He was in Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg. But before he did either of those films, he did a film called A Fistful of Fingers, which was a spoof Western film made on an extremely small budget. And I ended up doing some of the sound effects for that. And I played in the orchestra for that, for the film score. Mostly because I knew the composer, Francois, knew him quite well. And so I ended up playing Fender Rhodes electric piano and some synthesizers and stuff in the score. And then I did some sound effects as well. And one of the things I had to do was a fart. So, and I can pretty much fart on command. So, yes, they mic'd up my butt. It was fun. But yes, there we go. That's probably something about me that you probably never wanted to know in the first place. But there it is. So, Chris, I hope that answers your question about video exporting. It's a good question because it's, you know, there is actually no way of controlling the bit rate or the bit depth for video export, unlike with audio export, where you can change that. If you're doing like an MP3 export, then yes, you can change the bit rate and the bit depth. You can do all of that. So you can set it to like, 320 kilobits per second, for example, which is the highest rate for MP3. And if you're doing MP3 exports, I highly recommend that when you do the export, you set it to MP3 320 kilobits per second. Do that. If you set it lower than that, for music, it will sound terrible. You'll have all sorts of digital artifacting, and you'll lose things like the low end, the top end, will start to sound all digitized, and it won't sound great. But if you're doing spoken word, like a podcast, for example, which is just your voice, then you can totally get away with a lower bit rate if you're needing to keep storage down to a premium. Then encoding to a lower bit depth is something you can do. I actually I do some editing for a podcast every week, and so I do editing and I do mixing for that. So I process it, make it sound nice and sweet, and that kind of radio broadcast kind of sound is what I'm aiming for. And so when I'm doing that, my export is at 128 kilobits per second. I don't go lower than that because with spoken word, lower than that and it starts to sound garbled, and you get some digital artifacting. It starts to sound like a telephone in actual fact. So yeah, 128 kilobits per second is okay for spoken word. Music, it's got to be 320. And then really you should try something like Ogg Vorbis, or some other lossless file format that's you're not going to lose anything from the encoding, and keeping it down to a small file size. Something like Ogg Vorbis is good for that. And then there's FLAC, which is another file format that, again, it's lossless. You don't lose anything, but it does squeeze the data down quite a bit. But again, you don't lose anything. It's a good file format for that. And to that point, Mike says, I wish Ogg Vorbis would have become part of the standards, but the uneducated masses choose MP3. MP3 is just kind of, it's the most well-known, it's the most popular. I don't think anybody really knows about Ogg Vorbis. I mean, it's a weird-sounding name for a start. how the heck is Og Vorbis supposed to catch on? It, with a name like that, it's never going to catch on. That's like, when you give birth to your firstborn son and you call it Recalcitrant. There's a name that's never going to catch on. And you'd be weird for calling your son Recalcitrant. But anyway, I'm not saying don't do that. If that's a name that you like, go ahead, by all means. But it's not really something that's going to be, memorable. Whereas, I don't know, a name like Jeff might be more memorable. But yeah, file formats. FLAC is actually more popular than you think. It's certainly more popular than Og Vorbis, certainly more well known than Og Vorbis. And, if I'm going to do something where I'm going to be exporting and I need to export at a lossless format, but I need to keep the file size down, then actually FLAC is the way I'm going to go, because FLAC is widely supported on pretty much every DAW. And pretty much every video editing software will also support FLAC. So FLAC is the way to go. Og Vorbis, I mean, I don't really know very much about it. So if I don't know very much about it, then, I can't imagine that many people do. But anyway, all right, so the next question. Sorry, I was just actually setting up the next thing for the next question. Let me go back to the chat and to that next question, because it was Rock that had the question. And he says, greetings, I wonder if you have time, you could give a rundown on Ripple Edit and its best uses. Yes, we can certainly do that. Let's go back to here. No, that's not where I wanted to go to. That's where I wanted to go to. All right, so I've got this audio here, which is just one of the Studio One loops that comes with, it doesn't actually come with Studio One. This is one of the loops that you get with Noise Design souvenirs. So if you're a member of Studio One Plus, you will have this. It's in your account right now. And there's some really good ones for different instruments. And this one is, I've got this searched by instrument and then the product at the moment. So these are all keyboards and all the products that have keyboard sounds. And this is a good one in A flat major. All right, enough of that, because it's basically the same thing looped multiple times. All right, so Ripple Edit. Ripple Edit is very, very cool. So if we turn this on, it's next to the auto scroll at the top here. So if you look at the top here, you have cursor follows edit position, which at the moment I have turned off. And auto scroll, then Ripple Edit, and then next to that is toggle snapping. So Ripple Edit can be toggled here. And you can toggle it by, if you're on a PC, it'd be Control and Alt and F. Is that F? No, R. Control Alt R to toggle it. And that, I think that would be Command and Option and R on a Mac. So that's a key command that you can use to kind of turn that on and off. But for right now, I'm just going to use the mouse so it's obvious where I'm pointing and what I'm turning on. So let's turn that guy on, and let's say we want to cut these 4 bars from this loop. But we like what is either side of it, and we want to basically join this section here to this section here. If I now delete this with the delete key, you will notice that that section has gone, and then this section has slid into its place. It has been rippled into that place without me having to basically grab that end and drag it along and hope that I get the joining bits right. So I do this a lot for podcast editing. Like if there's a part of the podcast where there's some I don't know, there's kind of a little stammer or a little stutter, or there's some mouth clicks or some other extraneous noise where there's no talking but there's those things going on, and I want to cut those out and make it sound nice and seamless, then you know this is how I do it. So for example, let's create a new track here. Let's go and add a track. We'll call it Vox, and we will just record enable the track, and I will mute that to start with, and we'll get rid of that, and we'll go right back to the very beginning, and I will talk. And what I will do whilst I am talking here into the microphone and we are recording this is I will have a little stumble and a pause, and then I will say what I want to say. So now that I have had my little stumble, stutter, and pause, I can now carry on talking about what I was talking about, and it will sound seamless, as if there had been no issue. So let's go and listen to that. We'll turn up the volume a little bit. What I will do whilst I am talking here into the microphone and we are recording this is I will all right, so here is my stuttery part here. So I'm going to cut here. Have a little stumble and a pause, and then I will say what I want to say. And we'll cut there. And we'll basically take those out. And then we'll crossfade here. So we'll press X to crossfade. And then we'll back it up to before that point. And then I will say what I want to say. Now, it still doesn't quite make sense. So let's see if we can fix that. Okay, so what I can do here is I can cut here. And I can take out this part here. And we'll crossfade that. I don't know how successful this is going to sound, but let's try it. I will say what I want to say. I will say what I want to say. So I could probably cut that out as well. And make that make sense a little bit better. I will say what I want to say. And I can still move this a little bit better. I will say what I want to say. I will say what I want to say. I will say what I... Okay. Let's turn off snapping. And let's cut that. We'll crossfade that as well. I will say what I want to say. There we go. We've nailed it. So now if I back that up and we'll hear a little bit more in context. Whilst I am talking here into the microphone and we are recording this, I will say what I want to say. So now that I have had my little stumble, stutter, and I've got an arm there as well, which I can also get rid of. And I can crossfade that. And now, recording this I will say what I want to say. So now that I have had my little stumble, stutter, and pause, I can now carry on talking about what I was talking about, and it will sound seamless, as if there had been no issue. All right, so there you go. So that is how I personally use Ripple Edit. So I Ripple Edit, I have that on by default. So basically, as I'm going through the podcast, I'm basically cutting, hitting delete, and hitting X to crossfade. And then I end up with a very nice, seamless sounding podcast where I've taken out as many of the and pauses and stutters and stumbles as I can find. And I'll maybe leave a couple in to kind of, here and there, to make it sound natural, because people do kind of use and and it would be unnatural, I think, if I took all of them out. So I don't take all of them out. I'll leave like a couple in, and I will also leave a couple of the little pauses and the little kind of what I'm doing right now. I'll leave in a couple of those because, again, it's kind of natural. That's the natural rhythm of human speech, especially when we're talking off the cuff. We're not reading from a script. If I'm reading from a script, then I'm not going to have a lot of and ahs and stutters and stumbles and pauses. So those won't really be in the recording anyway. But still, even if I'm reading off a script for TV continuity or radio continuity, then yeah, wherever there is a stumble or a stutter, I'm going to cut those out and I'm going to replace them maybe with another take, or some way of saying it that's better. And so Ripple Edit can be really, really useful for that function as well. So I use it a lot for podcast editing. I may also use it if I'm doing something like a guitar or a trumpet solo or something like that. Once I've comped my master take, I might like go through and cut out little noises, like maybe the microphone stand has accidentally been knocked, or the trumpet bumped into the mic, something like that. I'll go through and I'll remove some of those things. But I won't use Ripple Edit for that, because when you use Ripple Edit for that, it moves everything. So you'd move things out of time if I did that. So you don't want to use Ripple Edit for that kind of thing. But I do a lot of, I just said do. But I do use Ripple Edit a lot for podcasts. So that would be, for me, the most useful way of using Ripple Edit. So I hope that helps. That's another terrific question. I like it a lot. Good questions. I'm going down to see if there's anything else. You guys have been talking a lot. Neil says, send sort of migraine blasting formula way. By the way, the old Edinburgh mature cheese aged 14 months is quite delicious. Good. I'm glad you're liking it, Neil. Yes, local homemade cheese is a good thing here in Scotland. Although I don't actually live in Edinburgh anymore. And we have 21 people watching and 21 likes. Superb. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it a lot. You guys are amazing. Let's see. I'm going through searching for questions again to see what I can find. Keith from Radio Top Trumpet says, pre-liking sounds so dirty for some reason. That's funny. Matt Cochran's here. Hello, Matt. Good to see you, buddy. And Bobby Booth retracted his message. Just Bob says, I purchased the Quantum HD2. Can't wait to hook it up. Yes, I have the HD8, which is its big brother, and the HD8 is freaking awesome. I've had it for a good wee while now, and I've had a good chance to play with it, to use it, and I'm using it right now. I'm using it for the loopback for doing this show. So you're listening to not only my mic go through the microphone preamps, which, by the way, are freaking awesome, brand new. They're not X-Max Pre's. They are the next generation of X-Max Pre's that we've developed at Presonus. They are super duper brand new preamps for microphones. And yeah, they are extremely good sounding. And the beauty of the combination of the Quantum HD8 and the new version of Universal Control that kind of came out pretty much at the same time, is that now in Universal Control on the HD, I think it might be exclusive to the HDs. I'm not sure about the Quantum ESs, the smaller units, but I'm pretty sure the HDs have two separate loopbacks. So you have a loopback 1, you have a loopback 2. This is really, really, really useful because I use loopback 1, which is what I'm using now for this show and for Wednesday's show and for making YouTube videos in general, because I want my microphone to be separate from the Studio One audio, because I have processing in OBS on my mic channel in OBS. So I have a limiter and I have a compressor and I have a little bit of EQ on the microphone in OBS because OBS has its own little set of plugins that you can use. So I use those, but I also want the Studio One audio to not have that processing on it. So it's great that I can have separate channels through the loopback into OBS, which is great. But then when I want to do a Zoom, for example, like maybe we'll do the after show Zoom with Billy or Mike or whomever, when I'm doing that, I have a separate loopback setup that basically has my mic going through it as well. So if I want to do a spontaneous demonstration of something in Studio One, I can do without having to open a mic channel in a Studio One song, which is what I had to do in the past, but I don't have to do that anymore. So it's really, really handy to be able to have a separate loopback where I can have a completely different set of sends going through that loopback compared to the other loopback. So that's great. And that is on the HD2 and the HD8. I'm not sure about the ES units, whether they have the same, but I do know that the ES units have loopback as well as standard. So all the new Quantums have loopback as standard, which means if you want to do a live stream like I'm doing now, or if you want to make tutorial videos, or if you want to do a podcast where you have somebody in as a guest on Skype or Zoom or something like that, you can get the audio of that Skype call or Zoom call into a Studio One song, and you can record the podcast into the podcasting template in Studio One. It's super duper great if you're doing that, where you're recording conversation between two people, and you can just set up the channels how you need to have it set up, and it works great. So yeah, that's really handy with the HD2. It's fantastic. It's a great unit. They are extremely impressive. I'm not just saying that because I work for the company that make them, but I have genuinely through usage been incredibly impressed with these. I was very impressed when I saw them going through design and build and everything else. But now that they are out and people are using them and I have one to use, man, it's really, really great. These are great units. Let's see. Neil is talking about video production. He says, I've been making little videos lately. My process is insane, but the end result is pretty good. I use 3 computers with 3 different operating systems and 3 different programs. I know, it's crazy. Yeah, that is a crazy way of doing it. I use just the one computer to do everything. So my process for making videos, like the Studio One 6.6 overview video that I showed you earlier, is I use OBS to record the video. So I have the Studio One video, the Studio One audio plus my microphone going into OBS, captured by OBS, And then what I do is that completed video I upload into Camtasia and I do my editing there. So I put my my title screen, my end screen, which in the business is called bumpers. So I put the bumpers in, one at one end, one at the other, and I do crossfades, and I will do zooms and those kind of things wherever I need to do those. If I want to highlight a specific thing in that's on the screen, then I can zoom into it, and I can also highlight it so that everything else around it is dark. I can do that in Camtasia. And then I render that in Camtasia to MP4, and then I upload it to YouTube. It's all done on the one machine at one time. It works great. And, if it's a long video, I think generally speaking, the standard is for every 1 minute of recording of the video, you're doing 5 minutes of editing, at least. So yeah, it does mean that the editing process is a wee bit longer, but I basically try and record my videos in such a way that I have as little editing to do as possible. And so that means I do rehearsals. I do a lot of rehearsals. I do a lot of practice run throughs, and I record them as well so that I can actually see what they're like and what I need to fix to make them better. So I'll do maybe 4 or 5 takes. And then, by the time I've got to the 5th take, it's really natural and it flows very, very easily. And that way I don't have to do hardly any editing at all. Maybe just, like I said, things that I want to focus on, zooms and crossfades, and that kind of thing. That's all I'm doing. And then I put the bumpers in, the titles at the end screen at the end, and that's it. That's my process. Let's see. Bobby Booth says, I've been thinking about buying one since it may not be long before the USB 96 is discontinued. It's not discontinued. It's still very much available. You can still buy them, and it's still a supported product. So I don't know quite where you're hearing that the 96 might be discontinued. I mean, obviously it will eventually at some point be discontinued, but yeah, it's not right now. Let's see. Dave Barcelo is here. Awesome. Glad he's here. Okay, so Neil elaborating on his processes. Audio captures on Ardor on a laptop running AV Linux, editing and mixing on Studio One on main Windows 10, and video editing on OpenShot, which would be on a Mac, I'm assuming. That's some process. That is definitely some process. Chris Maracna says, pick something else, please. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Chris. What are you talking about? I'm not really sure. I've used Camtasia for a long time. It's pretty good for what it does, and for what I need it to do, it does it. Now, are there other programs? Are there better ones? Are there cheaper ones? Yes, there are. I'm still using Camtasia 2018. I haven't got the latest and greatest version. Camtasia, I've pretty much moved completely over into a subscription model. I'm fine with that. I don't mind subscription models, but really, the version I'm using just now works in Windows 10. And I guess as soon as it stops working, then I'll use another product. To be honest, I will probably go to DaVinci Resolve. Because I think there's a free version of that basically does the things that I need it to do, which is not actually a lot. I don't do incredibly complicated editing for my videos. I really don't. I try and do as little editing as I can get away with. And I'm just very familiar with it. Suggest the best quality streaming platform, high dynamic orchestration music. For streaming, YouTube's pretty good, although YouTube has its own encoding thing going on, as most streaming services do, by the way. Bandcamp, I use Bandcamp. I have a Bandcamp service, a Bandcamp page. Tidal's okay, but Bandcamp's pretty good. Yeah, if you want to buy any of my stuff on Bandcamp, you can. If you want to get it for free, you can. Just search for Jonny Lipsham on Bandcamp, and you'll find me there, and you'll find one of my really old records on there called Swings on Roundabouts. My older record, Time to Turn, is not on there because it's currently not available because I'm having difficulties getting the masters, the original masters from the studio where I recorded that. So that's an ongoing issue. But yeah, most of my stuff is up there, or it's on SoundCloud. SoundCloud's okay. But yeah, I would definitely agree with Rich about Bandcamp, because actually the way they take their cut is actually pretty good. Every service is obviously going to take a cut because they need to kind of be profitable and pay for their storage and all of that stuff. So yes, if you're looking for a place to put your music for selling it, then Bandcamp, I would say, is probably among the best. TuneCore is another good option. And the thing with TuneCore is we've got the integration with Studio One Soundsets now. So you can upload directly to TuneCore. And I think you can sell your stuff on TuneCore. I'm pretty sure you can. Rock T says, thank you, sir. Very handy, as I do a lot of cutting and sliding events. Crossfade is outstanding. Yeah, Ripple Edit will save you a lot of the sliding things across. For sure. Neil says, so with Ripple Edit, upon deletion of events, everything beyond the deleted event gets pulled back in time, filling the gap. Exactly right. Basically, everything just goes boink, which is kind of what you saw when I was doing the editing there, in that piece of audio that I did. Basically, if you cut out this part here and you've got audio over here, when you delete this part slides across and fills the gap. And it means you don't have to. So Ripple Edit is something that is a big thing in video editing. So if you are into video editing and you need to move things around, and Ripple editing is a good way to do it, especially if you're doing picture and audio deletion at the same time, then yeah, Ripple editing is what you want to do, because you want to move everything across and fill the gap. So you don't have to then spend time trying to line things up and make sure the audio is still in sync with the picture. You don't want that headache when you're editing video, which is why Ripple Edit is a thing in pretty much every video editing software that is available on the market currently. But it was brought into DAWs because people do podcasts and people record podcasts indoors. I've been recording, as I say, I've been editing and recording stuff, voiceover stuff, for a lot of years. And so I've been doing it since Studio One version 2. And Ripple Edit was not really a thing until I think version 3 point something. I have to try and remember. I think it was maybe 3.5 that it came in, or it might have come in version 4. But either way, it's been in Studio One for a while, but it wasn't always so. And so when I was doing like a continuity announcement for radio or something like that, which is only like 10, 15 seconds long max, I still want to go and get rid of my little stutter stumbles and pauses. I want to get rid of all of those. I want to get rid of the mouth, the lip smacks, the mouth sounds, and all of that stuff. Now, yes, there's Isotope RX that can go and nix all of that stuff. It just runs a filter and gets rid of all of that stuff. That's great. RX is great for doing that stuff. But Sometimes I much prefer doing it the natural way and just going and grabbing them manually and deleting them and ripple edits and then crossfade. And it just sounds natural, and you don't run into the possibility of, some digital processing actually providing some artifacting that you don't want. Slip editing is a totally different thing, Rock. You're quite correct. Slip editing and ripple editing are two very different processes altogether. Slip editing is where you have the audio container that contains the waveform, and then what you do is you move the waveform inside the container to either the left, so you're moving it backwards in time, or you're moving it forwards in time. But you're keeping the container for the event in situ, in the same place. You're not actually moving the container, you're moving the audio inside the container. That's slip editing. Ripple editing is where you cut the event, and the events that are ahead of it in time move backwards in time to fill the gap. Let's see. I was asking for a different audio loop for demo. Billy, I'm not sure what you're talking about, dude. Sorry. I'm not sure what that comment refers to. So we did have 21 watching, and we got 19 now, but we got 22 likes, which is nice. Thank you guys. I appreciate it, everybody. You guys are all great. You're all fantastic. I appreciate you a lot. I'm going down. Dave from Aurora's Boarding Alice says that he likes DaVinci and Pinnacle. Yeah, Pinnacle I've heard is pretty good. Don't know how much that costs, but I've heard it's very, very good. Right, Tony Stringer has a request that I don't quite understand. Put a Melodia track in MIDI without MIDI keyboard on a background audio track for me. I'm not quite sure what you're requesting there, Tony. I'm very sorry. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. You are going to have to elaborate. Seriously, does not software let you track in frame rate? Perhaps I missed the whole converse. Yes, you can set the timeline to frame rate. Yes. And if you are if you're setting up your video, you can go into your song where the video is. Let's go back to that song. Hang on. So in here, you can set up the song. You can go to song setup, and you can set the frame rate. So I've got the frame rate as 30 frames per second. But if I click this from video button, what this will do is it will set the frame rate according to what the frame rate of the video is. So if I click this guy, it will change this if it's different. I think the frame rate in OBS is 30 frames per second. So I leave it at 30 frames per second and I don't change it. The record format is 24 bits. And then the sample rate is 48K. You can change that if you want to, and you can change this if you want to. You can change this to whatever you need to, whatever you need to change it to. So you do that in the song setup dialog box. But yeah, that's certainly something that's absolutely possible. Rockty says, where to turn on slip edit? You don't, it's not something that you turn on. It's a set of key commands that you apply in order to be able to move it. Joe Gilder has a great video on how to do it, which I highly recommend you go and check out. I think Gregor has done one as well, but definitely go and check out that video. It's really, really good. He did do it, I think, maybe last year, I think he did it. But if you go onto the Personas YouTube channel and in the search box there, just type in slip edit, you'll get the video, and you'll be able to watch that. And he shows you how to do that. So that's definitely well worth checking out. I don't personally have a video on it. Maybe I should probably do one, but I don't have one. Dwayne says my markers did not follow the ripple edit, so beware. So Jonny suggested a workaround using verses. Yeah, that is something to be aware of. The ripple edit doesn't affect the marker track. Okay, the ripple edit literally just moves anything that is ahead in time of the part that you remove, and it moves it this way. So if you've got markers that are marking specific things, you need to be aware of that when you have ripple edit on, it moves the audio, but it does not move the marker track. Why? Because the marker track is global. The same with the arranger track. It's global. It's a global track. So it's not on a per track basis. So if you're doing some ripple editing on track 3, but you're not doing ripple edit on track 4 or track 7 or track 10 or track 2446, and you've got all of those tracks just fine, and you're just doing it on this one track, it's not going to affect the marker track. The marker track's not going to be moving about this way and that way. You don't want that. You don't want it to be on a per track basis. That's why the marker track is a global track. So do be aware of that. We are coming up towards the end of the show. Let's see. I just want to make sure I've not missed anything. Tony says, I'm going to put in a solo part on a backing track, but I have no keyboard. Okay, if you don't have a keyboard, you can use your computer keyboard as a MIDI input. There is something in Studio One which is called the QWERTY keyboard. And what you'll need to do is you will need to create an instrument. Go over to the screen and do this, and let's say we get lead architect in here, and it's on its default sound just now, but I have a MIDI keyboard. But let's say I want to control this from my QWERTY keyboard. I think what I have to do is I have to press the tab key if I have it set up. Let me just go and check. Do I have this set up? So if I go Studio One, options, external devices, QWERTY keyboard, it's there. So I do have it set up. I always thought it was tab. It might be caps lock. It's caps lock. Press caps lock, not tab, you idiot. When you have it enabled in options, external devices, by the way, you should make sure you have this set up here. If you don't see this, then you can set this up in the user guide. If you go into the Studio One user manual, you'll be able to set this up dead easy. Once this is set in the external devices, and it should be here by default, then you're good to go. You can press the caps lock, and what you'll see here is you have a sustain key, and you have octave up or down, and these are your arrow keys, and then this is like your tab key, and then you've got a velocity that you can set here. These guys are not controllable from your QWERTY keyboard, so you cannot do pitch bend or modulation. You would have to write that in after the fact. So at the moment, the octave is set on C3. But if I use my keyboard, so the QWERTY keys, it's basically the top row. And then you have 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 0. And that's how you play it on your typing keyboard. And then you can change the octave. So if you want to go up an octave, and then if you want to sustain the chord, let's say we're doing this chord here. I want the tab key as my sustain pedal, basically. So I've pressed the tab key. You can see it lighting up when I do that. So I'm holding down the tab key after I've pressed those notes. Let's just get really dark for a minute there. And then as soon as I let go of the tab key, done. So if you don't have access to a keyboard, this is a great little way. I think in GarageBand and Logic, they call this musical typing, but it's the QWERTY keyboard. So there you go. I hope that this was useful. And yes, if you want to, you could manually draw them in, but that takes a long time. I wouldn't do it that way. I would use your keyboard here, and then if you want to do some pitch bending and modulation wheel stuff, then in the note editor, you can draw in that automation. So if you want to do some pitch bending, or if you want to, do some mod wheel stuff, you can draw that in after the fact. But that would be the way to do it. Does the sustain pedal act in a way to commit the chord as if it were in step record? That's a great question. I don't actually know because I've not actually done this before. So I don't actually know. But we could certainly find out. I could hit record here, and then I could hit the tab key. And then we could go take a look and see what it looks like in the note editor. I think I can see some sustain pedal automation. So if we go to sustain, there, see? We got sustain pedal automation written in here, but look, we've got short notes. So yeah, using the tab key basically writes the sustain pedal data in there. All right, we are over time, actually. We're 7 minutes over, but still, you know what? That was a great last question to finish off with. So if you don't have access to a MIDI keyboard like this guy here, then make use of your typing keyboard. If you're on a laptop, this is especially helpful for you. Alternative options are the Atom SQ. You can use that. If you don't have one, then yeah, you can do musical typing in Studio One using the QWERTY keyboard. And it will work with pretty much zero latency. What is Lead Architect? Lead Architect is a new instrument in Studio One 6. It was recently added in Studio One 6.6, but it was only available to subscribers to Studio One Plus only. However, that has changed. You can now get the Lead Architect from places like Sweetwater and Toman. So if you want to buy it, you can buy it from there. It's available, I think, for $99. I think. It's basically it's a new synth, and it's pretty cool. if you watch my Studio One 6.6 overview, I do a whole section on Lead Architect there for you to watch. So you can see what it is, what it does, and all of that. And you've seen a little bit of what it does. Anyway, there we go. We are 10 minutes over. I do believe that Billy has put in a link to the after show Zoom. So if you would like to go check that out and go and join us over there, you would be most welcome to do so. And until then, folks, I will see you on Wednesday when we will return for Songwriting Simplified. So if you have questions about songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory, or you want to talk a little bit more about the Halloween challenge, and I hope you guys are getting stuck in to making your Halloween songs, because there are prizes up for grabs. We can talk about that. I am partnering with my very good friend Rich Cresswell to do this again after the success that was last year. So it was great last year, and so many people participated. It was amazing. And Rich and I had a heck of a time trying to decide upon the winner. And we're hoping to have the same problem this year. A heck of a time trying to pick a winner. So the more, the merrier in terms of entries. And hopefully we will find it very hard to pick a winner. Or winners, I should say, because we have multiple prizes this year. All right, folks, I will see you then on Wednesday. Same time, same place, same channel. Have a good one, folks. Good night.